Hi there, I'm Mike, and what I have for you today is Star Wars The Black Series, Snowspeeder and Dak Ralter. Ralter? However you say it, that's how I say it too. As always, let's start with the bio on the box while you look at something on the screen. While stationed on Hoth, the Rebel Alliance modified T-47 airspeeders to become snowspeeders. The Snowspeeder was a two-man vessel with a pilot and a rear-facing tail gunner. So basically it comes down to this. The year is 2020. Empire Strikes Back was released 40 years ago. Not today, back in May, but still 40 years ago. So Hasbro had the bright idea of just making pretty much the whole year Empire Strikes Back themed. I'm not complaining. I love the movie. I'm just stating a fact. Here we have the Snowspeeder out of the box, and I mean, suffice to say, it's big. Originally revealed 6 years ago at Toy Fair in New York. 6 months. Oh, 6 months. It feels like we've been waiting for this for an eternity. This is actually the first vehicle released since Enfys Nest back in 2018, almost exactly 2 years ago. As stated in the bio, the Snowspeeder was featured in Empire Strikes Back during the Hoth battle, but it was first mentioned actually in throwaway dialogue between Han Solo and the TAC officer discussing finding Luke Skywalker. He asked if the speeders were ready yet, and they said they were still having trouble adapting them to the cold. Spoiler alert, they adapted them to the cold. So what these really are just T-47 air speeders with, I guess, a little bit of extra padding and insulation, but this is a Snowspeeder. So let's start off the review with the looks. Does this look like it should? And the answer might surprise you because it does. It looks like it should. The first thing I thought when I held this in my hand was, it's big. Like, not TIE Fighter big, but bigger than pretty much anything released in the Black Series so far. It's big enough to where I'm not entirely sure where to display it, which is weirdly a problem I don't have with the TIE Fighter. But nevertheless, it looks like it does in the movie. It's got the angles, it's got the cockpit, it's got the blasters. On the back, you've got things like the vents and the gun. It's got carbon scoring all over it to make it look like it's seen some shit. And it has little Arabesh symbols and writing all over it. I'm assuming these are the Star Wars equivalent to warning signs and no step signs that I had trouble putting stickers on my G.I. Joes when I was a kid. Hasbro's done a very decent job with this. So that's the looks. We've established, yes, it looks like it should. This could honestly just be a miniature model used for the movie. If you told me that this was, I'd have believed you. But what does it come with? That's the question here. So let's start with the accessories. This is more or less how it comes out of the box. This is everything that can essentially be removed from the Snowspeeder itself. So to me, since these things can be removed and they can then also be lost, these are accessories. There's some assembly required to this figure. So if you want to put it together yourself, it's very easy. There's a panel here. It covers this little area of the, engine, undercarriage, something. It's one of the gimmicks that we'll get into. It goes in bottom first and snaps right on. Next, we have this little part, the covering for the blaster that goes all the way back to the back here. It also just kind of slides on and clips. When you hear it snap, you know it's in. Finally, we have the blasters that actually sit on the front. These are keyed left and right. They plug right on and just as easily will fall right off. These things I've had trouble keeping on. It's nice that they are probably not gonna break, but it's also really annoying when they just randomly kind of fall off. Which is actually a weird homage to the original Power of the Force and Power of the Force 2 Snowspeeder, which had the same problem. Lastly, we have the harpoon gun, which just kind of plugs into the back, and then we have the string, which plugs in to the side. And with that, you have an assembled Snowspeeder. So you have a couple of accessories there, but it's really more assembling the Snowspeeder. What else does the Snowspeeder come with? It does come with some stuff. First, we have these little long things that come in a little baggie inside. They are, I believe, the grenades that Luke Skywalker used to chuck into the bottom of the AT-AT Walker. It's actually pretty nice that it comes with this. It's molded and has a little bit of gold paint right at the tip of it. But you might be thinking to yourself, what if I lose this? Well, they've got you covered. There's a little spot right next to the pilot seat with two little empty holes, one on each side. It'll actually slide right in, and once you get it in, it stays pretty well. I do have to say, if I were the pilot of this, I would feel a little uncomfortable with grenades just hanging out right next to me as I pilot. One stray blaster shot there could pretty much kill me, even if the shot itself didn't. Also, we get the grappling gun that the Luke Skywalker X-Wing pilot should have come with. They decided instead to put it with the Snowspeeder, which was a choice, I don't know. It has some silver paint at the front and again at the back. It unfortunately doesn't really work. It would be a cool gimmick if they did. It has a little bungee at the end, and that's actually what clips onto the belt. And then this is the part that will shoot off a magnet onto the bottom of the AT-AT. This also has a little storage part right on the starboard side of the seat. Is a little hole that this just kind of plugs right into. So again, it's kind of cool that they have storage for this thing for all the little accessories that can be lost. But that's not the main accessory. It does come with one main accessory, and that is Dak Ralter, exclusively available with the Snowspeeder. And you know what that means? Mini review. Go ahead and take a look at him on screen while I read the bio on the back of the box for Dak. An eager young rebel pilot assigned to Hoth's Echo Base, Dak served as Luke Skywalker's tail gunner during the Battle of Hoth, but was killed by Imperial fire that struck the back of the Snowspeeder. And here we have Dak in hand, played by John Morton. Sure, and right now he feels like he could take on the whole Empire himself. So let's talk about his looks. Does he look like Dak? And the answer is, I guess. You don't really see a whole lot of Dak. It's all with his helmet on. And of course the helmet here is removable, which I'll get into. I'm assuming that the Hasbro sculptors have done their research and done their job and gotten him to look like he does. But even with the helmet off, he has that skull cap on, that's the same skull cap that Luke Skywalker had. And it's a weird choice. And again, it's just, sure, it looks good. It looks like a human face, because the way they've done the sculpting and the digital face printing look great, but does it look like Dak? Sure, why not? But he also kind of looks like Hobby to me. You know Hobby, the
two fighters against a Star Destroyer
guy. Good read there, Hobby. So let's move on to his accessories. What does he come with? And the answer is not much. He comes with this little helmet here, and that comes off, which is nice. And it is kind of plain. It's got a little scuff detail and the Rebel crest symbols and the little lines on the side. But other than that, especially compared to Luke Skywalker's helmet, it's very plain. It would have been really nice if they'd given him a blaster, even the generic Rebel blaster that pretty much all the Rebels used. It would have been really cool if they'd given him something to hold. So if you did want to display him outside the Snowspeeder, he could have a gun. His hand is molded to be holding one. And sure, he can hold the grappling gun and he can hold the grenades. But Luke Skywalker held those. Dak didn't. Dak didn't do shit. He died. But still, it would have been cool to give him a gun. I'm just saying I would have liked that. But how's his articulation? Let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick.
The head has a waggle. It can move all the way around. The arm can move out this far. It can move all the way around. It has a butterfly joint, single jointed bend at the elbow, a swivel, wrist swivel, and hinge. This one hinges this way, a torso swivel. It moves this far forward, this far back. The legs can move that far forward, that far back. There's an upper thigh swivel, a single jointed knee, a swivel at the knee, a hinge at the ankle, as well as a rocker. With this being Dak's widest stance with both his feet flat on the ground.
So spoiler alert, it's the exact same as the Luke Skywalker Snowspeeder figure that I reviewed because he's like 80% the same figure. There's a lot of good stuff here. There's the shoulders with the butterfly joints. There's the elbows that, despite having a lot of thick sculpting on it, have a decent range of movement. The legs, but more importantly, the knees. There are the new knees here, which hide the sculpt, which is really great, but doesn't really reduce the amount of mobility that you can get. I was actually really afraid of not being able to sit this guy in the cockpit of the Snowspeeder because of the way the soft goods was around his waist, but it's not an issue, which is surprisingly nice. And again, I was initially against these new knees, but I did warm up to them. I like the way they hide the actual joint so it's not as garish or obvious, and it does keep a decent amount of range of movement. So next, let's talk about his paint, sculpt, and detail. As I said, he's like 80% the same figure as Luke Skywalker. As far as I can tell, the arms and the legs are the same, probably even the chest. Obviously the head is different because it's a different head sculpt, but the biggest difference here is actually his waist. Unlike the A New Hope Wedge Antilles released last year in the Black Series line, which was basically just an X-Wing Luke Skywalker head with Wedge's head on it instead, this one actually has a little bit of molding around the waist, which is different. The belt is completely different. It's got completely different molding, and it is lacking the lightsaber hook, because why would any non-Jedi need a hook for their lightsaber? It makes sense that Luke has one, but why would Dak need one? Why does Wedge need one? So it's nice they made that little change so you can more easily differentiate the different X-Wing pilot by something other than his helmet. I mean, it's not really about what you wear. It's all about where you are. So let's talk about want and availability for Dak here. Do I want it? And the answer is of course. Number one, pilots and flight suits are always a go-to for me. And I want more. I want Hobby. I want Dutch. I want all the guys. I want a Wedge like this. Give me all of Rogue Squadron. The second thing here though is that it comes down to availability. The only way to get this guy is to buy the Snowspeeder itself, and that's a $120 price tag. Maybe you can score this off someone who bought a couple different Snowspeeders because they wanted a fleet of them, but they don't need a bunch of different Daks and they're not going to customize them themselves. Maybe that's an option for you, but as it is right now, the only way to get Dak here is to buy a Snowspeeder. That means that if you break the helmet on your Dak, like I broke the helmet on my X-Wing Luke, the only way to replace it is to buy a whole new Snowspeeder, swap it out, and return it. Not that I would ever do that, but yeah, it's a little frustrating to have a figure like this exclusive to a very expensive price point. But he's also pretty nice added value to the set as a whole. So in the end, I'm gonna give Dak himself a 3 out of 5. He's not the best. He's a little generic looking. He doesn't really come with a whole lot, and he's gated behind a pretty high price point. But he's also necessary and a complete part of this balanced breakfast. Moving back to the Snowspeeder itself, let's go ahead and take a look at the articulation and gimmicks. Yeah, I'm kind of squishing those together because there's not a lot of articulation here. First, we do have an opening cockpit, which is necessary for getting figures inside. That's where they go. They don't just hang out on the top or the side. If you want to go ahead and count it, the seat belts do unplug and move forward, so there's some movement there, which is kind of nice. Unless you have them snug deep in there, they are a little tight to buckle when you have the figures in there. If they're too tight, just kind of rebend the legs and slide them in a little deeper, and it shouldn't be that hard to buckle these little guys in, just in case they get into any accidents. You don't want them flying out or dying. There's also these little flaps that move on the back that I'm guessing help with the airspeedering. The harpoon gun moves side to side. The string pulls out. There are these hidden panels on the side that actually move up, and that's also for piloting. And there's landing gear on the bottom. 3 to be exact. The little hatches open right up. The ones in the back, the landing gear is actually attached to the hatch. The one in the middle is not. The landing gear is surprisingly stable. I've never really had any issues with it, but it's also not very far off the ground. So if I did have issues with it, it'd be really hard to tell. There's also a compartment right here on the bottom which opens up to where you can pull the string back if you've pulled it out too far. There are a couple of gimmicks on here which work, and a couple that I just find fall flat or are just flat out missing. The gun on the back, let's take a look at this. First of all, it only moves side to side. I'm pretty sure the real one had a little bit of up and down. I feel like most good tail guns would. The sculpting on it is okay. It could use like a dry brush or something to give it a little bit of depth and detail. But let's talk about the string and the lack of any kind of actual usefulness of this thing. First of all, is it just a harpoon gun? Does it actually shoot blasters too? I didn't actually go back and watch. I should have done a little more research. But in the movie, is there any point where any of them actually shoot a blaster out of this? Or is the guy's only point is to hope at some point a harpoon would be useful? Why is there even a harpoon on a speeder like this? Was there dialogue along the way where someone was like, do you know it'd be useful for this? What? A harpoon? Why? Huh? It's just weird if that's the only thing this does is shoot off a harpoon that can essentially only be used once. I mean, it was useful for taking down the AT-ATs, but I feel like it's very niche, and they're lucky that they could do it. But even if it does shoot actual blasters, and that's fine, but the string, why? Why even make it movable? It pulls very far out. You can pull it back in with the little compartment on the bottom, but why? It would make sense if this had like a rocket firing thing where the string could go with it. I know the Black Series tends to stay away from that, and I respect it from doing that. It's not a little kid kind of thing, and it's going for a little bit more adult realism in your plastic toys. But I would have liked some kind of reason for there to be a string here. Why not just make it so it goes from here to here and stops? Why even worry about this? All I'm really doing with this is pulling out the string, pretending that I shot a harpoon out. It doesn't shoot from the side, which you can, I guess, disconnect and pull out, but that's just not how that works. This is just a really bizarre way to implement what we've got going on here. Hasbro, just commit. Make it rocket firing or make this not movable. Right now it's in sort of a weird limbo of halvesy gimmicks, and it just baffles me. Apart from that, Hasbro does have this weird kind of fetish for showing the inner workings of the vehicle. I feel like they feel like that's what adults want. Like, I want to be able to pop off the side here and see the detail underneath the wing. I don't. Spoiler alert, Hasbro. I don't. I'm never, ever going to pop this off, ever. Never once. These are kind of nice because, again, they do this in the movie. That's part of the flying. So I'm not going to complain too much, but the fact that they wanted to pop this off is weird. But the big thing for me that I really feel like this could have used is, instead of those weird hollow shell bits inside where they have faux parts, I would have liked lights. I would have liked noise. It's crazy that we have the Power of the Force figures from the 70s and mid 90s that have lights and sounds, and those were like $30 or $20 way back in the day, and here I am with a $120 toy that doesn't have any lights or sounds. Like, at the very least, I could see firing a rocket is a little playtimey, kiddie kind of, I get it. But lights and sounds? No! I'm never ever going to do anything with the gimmicks they have here, but if I were walking by this, yeah, I'll probably randomly hit the sound button sometimes to see the lights come on the front, or maybe a cabin light so it could illuminate the figures inside. There's a lot of options they could have done. I would have even paid an extra $10 if it had lights and sounds, but already it is a $120 figure. I really do feel like the gimmicks they could have put in here would have gone a long way. So speaking of the gimmicks and all the detail and stuff, let's talk about the paint, sculpt, and detail of this, because there is a lot here. I have to say, one of my biggest complaints, especially with the Enfys Nest swoop, was on the box. There was a lot of detail and paint on there that was missing from the actual figure. That's not entirely true on this. There is a lot of painted detail on here. It is muted compared to the box art. On the box art, we have really crisp, dark scoring patterns on here, but it's still there. There's even on the scoring patterns here, the darker areas, there's chips molded into the plastic, again, to make it look like it's been in a battle or two, which is a really cool detail. There's lines all through it, and it would have been nice, I think, to have a little bit of panel lining on it just to kind of bring out the detail in the lines, but I'm not too worried about that. The canopy has a lot of great little scuffs and chunks missing out of it. Again, they've done a really good job of making this look like it's been worn. I like it. The back has a lot of the details molded and kind of etched onto there. There's all kinds of rivets and mechanical bits and little stripes and lighter colors on the fins here. There's the stripe that goes all the way up the front, which I think could have been a little bit darker, but still looks good. And again, kind of on the back right here. The detail and sculpt here is amazing, and it should be for the price that this toy is. Well, I do kind of want to point out the cockpit on mine does not close properly. There's always a bit on this side, which is just a hair higher than this side. It doesn't snap in or rest in correctly, and it does kind of bug me when I notice it. But the magic comes with the actual cockpit itself. I feel like they put more detail inside the cockpit than they did around the entire Snowspeeder itself. And that's kind of nice, because up until now, we've only had one vehicle with an actual cockpit. The TIE Fighter has an actual cockpit, and the thing is so big, and the cockpit is so deep in there, it's really hard to even make out what's going on inside the cockpit. In here, there's actually not a lot of problems. When you have Luke in here as the pilot, his hands do fit right onto little joysticks on each side. Those joysticks do come off, So it might be easier maybe to pull them off, put them in his hand and snap them back in. But again, I've never really had any problems. But if they do come off, they do pop right back on. So it's not an issue. Likewise, with Dak in the back, he has probably one of the absolute coolest looking control panels I've ever seen. There's a little screen on there. There's all kinds of sculpted buttons and switches, lots of detailing, lots of paint. It looks fantastic, and he has 2 joysticks again there because it is a gunner. There's a bit of molding on the seat to make it look padded, which is neat. But along the rim and the sides of the cockpit, there's just a crazy amount of paneling and switches and painted details. You can just kind of point to any bit and it looks like it does something. I want to sit in this and I want to hit all the buttons just to see what they do. It's crazy the amount of detail they have in there, and I absolutely love it. The cockpit is actually my favorite part of the whole vehicle, which is silly because it's so small and it's a place that's largely closed off most of the time. I'm never going to display this with the canopy open, but I know it's there and you know it's there and it looks great. I absolutely love the detail they've put into this. There's a lot of hard work went into that and it shows. So let's talk about the want and availability of the Snowspeeder and the value. I always add that on to especially things like this, which are pricey. Is it worth it? So the want. Now, if you'd asked me before they announced this, in my head, the Snowspeeder is too big for the Black Series. The TIE Fighter was generally considered to be a failure because it didn't really sell that well and it was very expensive. And it just kind of seemed to me a weird choice when there are a lot more choices that make a lot better sense in a 6-inch scale, more personalized vehicles. But we got a Snowspeeder, and as soon as I saw it shown off at the toy fair, I wanted it. There wasn't a world that existed that I wasn't gonna buy this figure. I was gonna own it and I was gonna buy it as soon as I could. So where is it available from? Well, I believe it's considered to be a fan channel exclusive. And what that means is basically specialty shops like GameStop or Barnes & Noble, or online stores like Dorkside or Amazon or Entertainment Earth, Big Bad Toy Store, places like this. I'm pretty sure you can get it from Target's website and Walmart's website, but I don't think I've seen any reports of people finding this in the stores, so I don't think that's a thing. But basically, anywhere online you want to buy it, you pretty much can. I ordered mine originally from Dorkside Toys, but Amazon got theirs, and I sat there for like a week, biting my nails, wondering when Dorkside was going to get theirs in, and eventually I bit the bullet, canceled my Dorkside pre-order and ordered it from Amazon and had it like a day later. So I don't know, I feel bad about it a little bit because I like to support, smaller places. I don't like to give Jeff Bezos more money, but I needed this bad boy and I needed it sooner than I got it. I mean, I didn't need it, but you know what I mean. Is it worth it? $120. Granted, $20 of that is a $20 toy. Like this, if you bought this at the store, it would be a $20 figure. And you could say that this is the gun that comes with them. I mean, that's what Wedge comes with, and he kind of pegworms a little bit, but $20 figure, sure. So is this right here worth $100? And I have to say, yeah, I guess. I bought this full price. I sort of see it as my responsibility as a Black Series collector at the level that I collect the Black Series to support the line by buying these as soon as I can for the full price. Yes, history says that if you wait within a couple months, probably around Black Friday or Christmas time, you could probably get this for $100 or $80, maybe even $60. Traditionally, these things get marked down pretty good. Every vehicle has so far. Even the Dewback, which was popular, was, I think, going on Amazon or Entertainment Earth for like $20 or $30 at one point. I know a lot of people like to wait and buy them then, and that's fine if that's the way you play your game. You do you. I did me. I do wish it were just a little bit better. Like, it's cool how big it is, and we were way overdue for another vehicle. I'm not really complaining too much that we got this, but I do think that maybe the value isn't quite at the price point that it is. I think $100 flat would have been a better price point for what we're getting. So my score for the Speeder alone is a 3.75 out of 5. So I'm gonna average those scores together and maybe round up just a little bit because I do like it. And I'm gonna give this whole thing a 3.5 out of 5. Again, it's kind of solidly in the middle of average. It gets a C. Like I said, if Empire Strikes Back is your jam, if the vehicles are what you love, maybe snatch this up before they start to kind of disappear. But if you wait, you could probably get it for a decent deal down the road. But I'm not sad it's in my collection. But I do feel a little bit like a dog who's finally caught a car they've been chasing. Like, it's big and I don't know what to do with it. So that's it for my Snowspeeder review. Let me know down in the downstairs area what you thought of it. Did you like it more than I did? Did you like it less than I did? Are you waiting for it? Or are you gonna buy it now because you watched the video? I love to read and respond to all the comments, so please let me know. I'd also like to take a moment to thank these people here for supporting me on Patreon at a Black Series level or higher. I also do have a YouTube membership if you wanna hop on there. Either way, it helps out the channel, and I'm eternally grateful for anyone that chooses to do that. If that's not your thing, down in the downstairs area are a couple different ways you can support the channel that are free, up to and including liking, sharing, subscribing, hitting the bell for more notifications. And that's it. Thanks for watching, thanks for getting this far, and I'll see you later. Bye.